You know, this is the thing I used to say to my wife: just because I love you, everyone else didn't suddenly become ugly. Like that's not that's not how, right. That's not how this works.
Okay. 1, 2, ready, go.
Welcome to the Called to Be Bad podcast. My name is Mariah Martin, and I feel called to be bad. It turns out I'm not the only one. Join us as we dig into all things bad, scandalous, deviant, you know, the stuff that makes good church folks squirm in the sanctuary. Why? Well, because sometimes the scandalous is spiritual, deviant is divine, and bad is beautiful. Say yes to the call, and let's see what holy trouble we get into today.
You will feel attraction to other people. Now, depending on the agreements that you make, will depend on to what extent you follow up on those attractions, right?
Yes.
But where jealousy comes in is, again, feeling, this belief that attraction to other people other than your partner is wrong, which it is not. Jealousy is, again, around possessiveness and control. Now, it doesn't mean that those who are in non-monogamous, ethical non-monogamous relationships don't feel jealousy. We can still feel jealousy. But what's different is that because we have that, foundation of open communication and radical honesty, we have conversations about it. Here's why I feel jealous when I, see you talking to this person, or hear you, or see when you interact with this person. I need to explore that within myself, and then discussions around, what agreements need to be made in relation to that. And again, whether you're in a monogamous or non-monogamous relationship, those are healthy conversations to have. There's a term in non-monogamy circles. Well, I mean, just in relationship circles generally, called compersion, which is this idea that we feel when our partners are feeling joy being with another person, we feel joyful for them, right? We see them happy, we see them fulfilled, engaged, and excited, and that makes us happy as well, as opposed to feeling jealous. But it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum, right? Because are there times where I'd like to be with someone that I'm in a relationship with, and logistically it's not going to work because they're with someone else? So do I feel disappointed? Yes. Jealous? No. And it's okay to be disappointed, right? Yeah. And even if jealous feelings arise, those are okay as long as they're not festering, as long as they're not driving the car, so to speak. If jealous feelings arise, can you do the challenging and difficult work of looking and asking yourself, why do I feel jealous? Is it because I feel like I'm supposed to be the only person that my partner has some affection for? Why do I believe that? Why do I feel that? What's the story that got put in my head around that? Does my partner being attracted to someone else take away from how much they love me? Because again, love is not a fixed quantity element, right? And at least I believe it's not. But maybe that's where jealousy feelings come from. I believe that there's only so much love to go around, and if they're being attracted to somebody else, I am getting less. Or again, back to that fear of, if they're attracted to someone else, they might leave me, right? They might abandon me. So now your abandonment issues are being triggered. Now your worthiness issues are being triggered. What's wrong with me that they're, maybe having some googly eyes at this other person over here, having conversations with this person? Is there something wrong with me? How have I failed? How am I less than? So all of that stuff gets triggered. And regardless of if you're monogamous or non-monogamous, that stuff can get triggered. Are you going to do the work around that stuff? Or are you just going to go and say to your partner, you can't talk to them anymore, you can't spend time with them anymore, and then seek to control them in order to not feel what you're feeling?
Right. And I like that you bring that up, because it points out that jealousy, assuming assuming that your partner is operating within your established framework for your relationship, your established, your agreements. Your agreements. Thank you. Yeah. then jealousy is your own emotion to work on. It is not the job of your partner to adjust their behavior to make you feel less jealous.
Yes.
And yeah, just, I guess also recognizing that it's okay if you are not the sole source of their happiness. Like, it's okay for them to be happy from other... And,
not only okay, it should be that way.
Right, yeah, that's healthy. Yeah, like... And imagine if we did that with, like, activities. If it was like,
right.
No, you're not, like, as opposed to people. Like, if it was like, no, you can only be happy when you're with me playing games versus like, like, no, you can't go play disc golf because that will make you happy. Like, it is a similar thing, but with people and romance, perhaps, and attraction,
right.
and maybe even sex or sexuality.
So the quote from Esther Perel, her book Maiden in Captivity, great book, says, "Today we have to give to one person what entire village used to provide. Yes. Financial, emotional support, companionship, entertainment, friendship, familiarity, mystery, love, sex, the works." That's a lot to put on one person's shoulder. And then, again, to go back to the jealousy, what often happens is we put conditions on our partner's friendships. I'm okay with you going out and playing golf and spending time drinking beer with your partner as long as they're the same gender. Yeah. Right. But if, if I'm, I used to have these discussions with my wife all the time. Like, if your friend's female and you're doing these things, that's a no-no, because there's a possibility you will start to catch feelings for them, and then this whole thing falls apart. And I don't believe that friendships, true, deep, platonic friendships need to be limited to same gender arrangements. That's ridiculous. 2 or 3 of my greatest lifelong friends happen to be women. And there's never been anything other than that just deep, supportive friendship, companionship, and platonic companionship, support. These are the people when great things or horrible things happen in my life. These are the first people I'm calling. And I have male friends like that as well. So I think part of it is now also comes down to trust, right? Can you trust when your partner says this is a friendship? Can you trust that your partner is able to navigate that and remain in a platonic relationship? And if you are that person and you realize that you have a platonic friend who you start to have emotional feelings for, like, lean into that, right? And not lean in as in pursue the feelings, but begin to honestly reflect on that, go into deep questioning and awareness around that, and be honest with your partner about that. And again, to your point, look at the agreements you all have made. Maybe you have agreements that say, you're allowed to go flirt with people, but don't make it go past flirting. Or maybe your agreement is that, no, we don't have emotional romantic feelings for each other. Well, I've realized that I have for this person. So now what do we do? Or to realize that to hold that standard of never having any romantic or attraction to someone else is kind of near impossible to hold on to, because we're human, right? So now what are the agreements that we're going to make around this? And to be clear, people in non-monogamous arrangements, relationships, the what I call the metamors, the partners beyond the main partner, they don't always end up being sexual relationships. It may just be dating. Romance and sex are not the same thing, right? Yeah. So you can have a romantic relationship that does not involve sex. You can have a sexual relationship that doesn't involve romance. Right. So it's about the choices and the agreements you make with your primary partner, if you happen to have one. So in many ways, for me, solo polyamory is so much easier, because like there's less negotiating around that to make. And the other thing to go back to that, as we evolve, there are people who have practiced solo polyamory and they're like, you know what, I realize I need a primary partner in my life, but non-monogamy is still an important part of who I am. So they seek a main partner who is good with them being non-monogamous, regardless of if they are to or they're not. So you can change and you evolve. I know people who've been non-monogamous and then became monogamous because it felt who they were and who they wanted to be. So always be clear about who you are, who you want to be, and be brave. And when your fears are triggered, when the discomfort is being triggered within you, that's your opportunity for some deep healing. Mm-hmm. Because if something in you is being triggered to that point of discomfort, there's some wound there, whether it's a real wound or an imagined wound. There's something there that needs to be to look at. Tara Brach, Buddhist teacher and author, she wrote a book called Radical Acceptance. I
have that book.
It's a great book, and one of the things she talks about is my favorite definition of fear: the anticipation of future pain.
Yeah,
that's fear, and so many of us are walking around not wanting to feel pain. We are pain averse people, right? And we get this also to tie into this conversation. We absorb this narrative that once we find Mr. Right or Mrs. Right, and we get married and this is my life partner, I will never have to feel the pain of loneliness. I will never have to feel the pain of abandonment. All this person, rejection. This person will be the Band-Aid of so many wounds that I have suffered or that I have yet to possibly suffer. Right.
And that's so true. Can I jump in here?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, that's so true, especially within Christian circles. I don't know about you, but I grew up, and especially in college, it was very much like this, Ruth, find your Boaz is going to come find, which also is ironic because the likelihood of Boaz and Ruth being that Boaz wasn't married to other women before, he was he was older than her. He likely had other wives. So just throwing that out there. And that to be completed as a Christian, you need to find your other half, your soulmate that God has prepared for you. Yes. So there's this element of spirituality on top of romantic relationships or partnerships.
And the implication that if you don't find that person, you are not following God's plan. You haven't prepared
your heart. Yeah, you haven't been praying hard enough. I used to have a prayer journal of prayers for my future husband. I was so sad. And not only is that super heteronormative, but it's not the amount of things I could have gotten done when I was just worried about my future husband. I had stuff to do, but I was just so set on gotta figure out who that is. I honestly believe that I thought I thought I was an extrovert for so long when really all that extroverted energy was from me trying to find a boyfriend. And then when I got married, I was why do I not want to go anywhere? Why do I just want to stay here? Why am I feeling introverted? I think I've been introverted this whole time.
Yeah.
But it was just because I wanted to go out and meet men, boys, whatever. So I wanted to share one thought when you were talking back about putting limits on your relationship, saying you can't hang out with opposite sex people. Again, heteronormative, that's just assuming that you're straight. Also, it operates on the assumption that every opposite sex, if you're straight, relationship is inherently sexual. And I feel very uncomfortable with that. Relationships are not inherently sexual. We don't need to be sexualizing friendships. And also, if there is attraction there, instead of punishing that, can we honor that? If it's within your parameters, to recognize that attraction happens and you don't have to act on attraction. You know, it is something that can flow through your body and it's okay. And like, honestly, like I think of attraction as part of recognizing the beauty of the world. And if you believe in God, recognizing the beauty of God's creation, which includes human beings. Human beings are so beautiful. Like,
yes, we are.
I fall in love with everyone because you just like notice how beautiful people are, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you are like sexually deviant or that you need to go and act on all those attraction impulses. Like you can just be like, that is a beautiful human being. I want to spend time with them, and that's okay. It's not threatening to the sanctity of if you have a primary partner, like it doesn't have to be threatening. And if you're threatened by your partner being attracted to someone else, like you can, and especially if they're honest with that, that can be a really beautiful conversation. I had a talk, that sounded very official. I was
conversation.
A conversation. Thank you. I was talking with Nick and I said, hey, I noticed I had these strange feelings. It might've been jealousy. I'm not quite sure what it was about. I'm recognizing that it's not logical and there's nothing you need to do to change. You didn't do anything wrong, but I just want to name it. Like, I just wanted to put it out there and say, like, I know it's not logical. There's nothing to do about it. I just wanted to say it. Like, it just,
and how much lighter did you feel after that?
Oh yeah, it felt better. Right. And Nick was just like, okay. Like, you know, it wasn't like, what? Yeah. Crazy, you know, like, what are you doing? Like, I didn't.
Go back to something you said, we often conflate any sort of attraction with sexual attraction. Yes. Right? How many times are we attracted to a person's intellect? Yes. Or to a person's just bon vivant, love of life, right? Yeah. Attracted to the person's skill, attracted to... So because we generally don't have great conversations around this and parse this out, we automatically just assume if it's sexual. They're an attraction, it's got to be sexual. And to your point, even if it is, it doesn't mean we have to do anything about it. We can just recognize that that's what it is and go like, okay, there it is, and move on. So a lot of this is about knowing yourself, right? And a lot of us, unfortunately, don't take the time to really dig deep and know ourselves until post-crisis, right? Yeah. To your point earlier, it's like all of a sudden you find yourself in a long-term relationship and it's not working well, and you remember how it was when you were a teenager and that rush of endorphins and hormones, and all of a sudden you find yourself attracted to and then having an affair with someone who reminds you of the boyfriend you had when you were 17, and you were like, well, where did that come from, right? Right. Yeah. But this is why I'm a great advocate for people being in therapy, especially when things are going well. Yes. You know, you don't need to have a problem to go to therapy. Exactly. Yeah. When things are going well, take the time to know yourself even more, so then you can recognize when these things come up and sort of have a game plan for recognizing them. Oh, I feel this attraction to this person. Is it sexual? Is it intellectual? What kind of attraction is it? Maybe it's an attraction because they remind me of someone I used to be with, or they remind me of who I used to be. And even though I'm not that person anymore, there's still some nostalgia around that for all these reasons. And then to go like, none of this is wrong. Right? It reminds me of Anne Lamott. Do you know that? Do you know Anne Lamott? Love me some Anne Lamott. Absolutely. Yeah, I love it how, like, in a lot of her writing, she'll be like, yeah, I was in a really bad mood, but then I went to the store and I flirted with the cash register or the cashier. Thank you. Good gravy. Or it could be the register. Listen, some of these registers, you know, with their bots and automated voices are very humanistic these days, right? But I just love her, like, the idea, again, it's like connecting with someone else's vitality. And it's life affirming for you to do that. Yeah. Right. As well. And so one of the things that this for me personally is connected to is, I mentioned at the top of the show, a lot of my work is around anti-racism and Many people are not aware of a concept called pleasure activism. And again, pleasure doesn't mean sexual. So let's just start with that off the top, right? There's many ways you can have life affirming pleasure in your life. One of the ways we subvert, this capitalist racist idea of is always got to be work and grind, is by prioritizing pleasure in your life. And for many of us, we derive pleasure by being with other people, engaging in activities with other people. Again, don't need to be sexual. It can be simply, you going out, you're having a good time, you're playing games, you're being social, you're being creative together. All of that is life affirming. So for me, and I think for a lot of non-monogamous folk, we realize that pleasure principle really applies to our relationships as well. So we prioritize being in relationships, whether it be casual dating or really more deeply profound heart-to-heart romantic relationships and sexual relationships, as a way to prioritize that pleasure principle of human connection. Am I saying that engaging in ethical non-monogamy is a way to subvert white supremacy? Maybe I am, right? Maybe because one of the white supremacy norms that we always confront with that we don't know is heteronormativeness, and this idea of monogamy and a relationship needs to look like X, right? One man, one woman. So this is subverting these internalized ideas that we have that we don't even know we're following, because it's what we were born into. It's all we've ever known. We've absorbed it. We know it without even having to have conversations around it. So let's have more conversations around the things that we don't usually talk about in order to normalize them, one, and then be clear about where we are with them. So even if you're a person for whom monogamy is what works for you and how you choose to practice intimate sexual and romantic relationships, if non-monogamy is normalized, then you won't have a problem with someone being non-monogamous. You won't seek to infringe on their rights to live their relationships as they so choose. And back to the jealousy thing, you won't feel threatened when your life partner in whom you're in a monogamous relationship meets and befriends someone who's non-monogamous, because that's a whole other thing as well, right? You can't be friends with this person. They're polyamorous and they're going to try and want to get you in their relationship. No, that's not how any of this works. No, I've probably said it before on the podcast, but I believe so strongly that there's a huge difference between saying that's not for me, and that's wrong. And that's wrong. Exactly. Yes. You can say non-monogamy is not for me, without condemning other people and how they choose to live their life. And you can learn about, study, read about non-monogamy without opening up your marriage or opening up your relationship. So at this point, okay, so say people are listening and they're tracking and they're like, okay, I'll deal with my own jealousy, attraction doesn't mean you have to act on it. Non-monogamy is the thing. I'm with you. But what do I do with the feelings of like, this is not right? And because like of the like one flesh thing in the Bible, like how do you think theologically? Like what if someone said like, yeah, sure, other people are doing it is fine, but what if I still think it's a sin? Or what do you like? What if God doesn't like it? So for me, then, this is simply a small facet of the bigger conversation around what do I believe about and my relationship with God, right? How do we define God? How do we understand God? There's that verse in Genesis that we all love that God said, let us create man, human, in our own image. More often than not, we do the reverse. We create God in our image, right? There's that verse in the Bible, that God is a jealous God, right? Is God a jealous God, or did someone who was jealous write that? Right? More often than not, if we are honest about it, we create God in our image, and God ends up being the super parent. God ends up being like our parents, the epitome of love, but who will punish us if we do something wrong. Right? So that's when I grew up very evangelical. That was my understanding and relationship with God. This being of infinite love, but don't piss him off. And it was a him. Yeah. Don't piss him off, because then you will be punished. I just saw a great meme today. If you're in the struggle, it means you're doing God's will. If you're in the struggle, it means you're not doing God's will.
Oh, yeah. Which right? Is it?
Right. Where are we? Where are we with this? So for me, it's a bigger theological question around God. So me personally, I've evolved in my Christology and my theology. God is not a being. God is not this personage up in the sky looking down on me. God does not, I said this in church one time, and I'm in unity. And unity, again, very new thought. We don't have a literal relationship with the Bible. For us, heaven and hell are not places you go in your afterlife. They're more realities we create through our thoughts that we hold in mind and how we live our lives. So we don't have that sort of like literal traditional expression of Christianity. But one day, and God is not this being in the sky. God is presence. God is principle. God is the operating function of the universe. God is the great harmonizer. God is love in that way. But that idea of God still being a personage is so embedded in us. If you do hold on to a theology that says God is this supposedly benevolent parent, but who will still punish you if you do something wrong, and here's a list of wrongs. By the way, that list of wrongs varies according to which tradition you're in, right? So if you believe that about God, then yes, you're going to struggle with this, because now you've come up against something that doesn't feel in alignment with that. So now this might be an opportunity to go take a deep look at your theology. What's my embedded theology, right? What are these ideas and beliefs around God that I was simply told, absorbed, or believed from my childhood? For many of us, our first idea of what God is super parent, because we were 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And everything was about our parents. So God was just our parents blown up, right? Many of us have evolved beyond that, but we still have this kind of idea of God as super being. So perhaps it's an invitation to notice where you are in your own personal theology and Christology, and go like, am I willing to dive in and examine those? And many of us are not, right? Because we, again, anticipation of future fear, we don't want a crisis of faith. We don't want to be wrong about it, because now if I'm wrong about this, I might go burn in hell. I don't want that to happen. Right?
And if you're wrong and you've been in a marriage for X amount of years,
yes, what might I lose?
Happy, right? What could have been,
right? Will I be expunged from my community? Will I lose my spiritual community? Will I lose my family? Will I lose my partner if all of a sudden I realize I don't believe theologically what I used to believe 5 years ago, 10 years ago? And heaven forbid that deep look into your theology is spurred because of your relationship and your sexual needs evolving. So that opens a can of worms that a lot of people don't want to go with.
They're not ready for.
They're not ready for. They don't want to be ready for. And then they make the assumption that the theology is the right thing. There's no right and wrongs in theology. There really isn't, because if you think about it, and I'm just going to keep this in the Christian concept because that's the concept that I'm most familiar with. From the beginning, there were multiple Christianities. There was no one Christianity. There was no one set of this is the only way. Today, look how many denominations, look how many flavors of Christianity that we have. Are they all right? Are they all wrong? Some of them think they are, and some of us think others are wrong. From the inception of humanity, we've been struggling to make sense of all that is. We've been struggling to make sense of the universe and our place in it. And this is how God evolved. This is how religion evolved. And it's interesting that, we often say God is beyond our understanding, but yet we put some clear definitions and requirements around our relationship with God. Well, if it's beyond our understanding, is it quite possible that what we believe isn't the entirety of the picture? And there's much more to it. In unity, we believe that each of us is the individualized expression of the fullness of God, right? So God is fully present at the point of where I am, of who I am. Then if that's the case, and you're different than I am, then yeah, guess what? God is this infinitely expressing presence in the universe. And for me, the best way we can honor that divinity is to go, what is it that brings me the greatest sense of fulfillment and peace in my life, especially internally?
Yeah, I think going back to the meme that you talked about, I think that touched on something important about if we're in the struggle, we're going against God, or that's where God wants us to be. I think that at least I was very aware of this, again, especially in college, this idea that discipleship or following God meant struggle, carrying your cross. It meant going against your desires for God. And I think that impacts that view of God or view of discipleship impacts our sexuality, because we can't trust our pleasure. We can't trust our happiness, because if our happiness, if our pleasure, if enjoying life is antithetical to God's will, then I honestly thought at one point that God was going to pick a boyfriend or a life partner for me that I wouldn't like. But then if I was with that,
I'm so sorry.
I know,
I'm so sorry,
right?
You had to go through that.
But that was like, I would do it. I would do it for God if that's what God wants. We're not taught. I just heard someone recently say, the devil works in our pleasures. This Satan is disguised in good things. And man, what do you do with that? That makes it so hard to trust yourself.
You're right. If Satan is disguised in good things and God is good, where does that leave you? For me, that old narrative again comes back to that place of control and limitation, right?
And we put that on God.
And we put it on God, and we put it on our partners as well, right? We seek to control, we seek to limit, and then we put it on ourselves. Self-control, self-limitation. And there's that narrative that you're right. Anything pleasurable needs to be called into question, especially if it's sexually, romantically pleasurable. And I believe this narrative was created because there's no, I think, religious theological narrative that is going to hold up to the same level of satisfaction and self-fulfillment as sexual and romantic pleasure, because that's who we are as human beings. That is how we are biologically created. Part of it is about the continuation in the species and reproduction, but also because it just feels damn good, right? And if anything feels that good, it's going to distract us from quote unquote doing the work of God. So therefore it must be a sin, right? But you know what? We realize, hey, okay, we can't stop humans from being human. So let's curtail a little more and let's make it about marriage, right? Between one man and one woman. So at least there can be procreation. And then we're going to consecrate this with God so that we bring in the idea of this is a holy union. And now there's this theological pressure on top of on top of what is already a challenging thing of a long-term relationship.
Oh,
right?
I fully expected sex between me and my life partner to feel like a holy, sacred experience. That kind of like that God is in the bedroom, that this is a holy act. And man, if that is not...
I was going to say, I want to ask how disappointed you were.
I just like...
From that regards. From
pressure,
that regards.
Pressure, especially if you have waited till marriage, or which basically means doing everything but intercourse for most people. The pressure that puts on the night of the honeymoon, and what happens? Like, do you question whether your relationship is from God? You know, if it doesn't feel like a holy, sacred act, and again, like I think that like the part of this podcast is to examine what is holy and what is ordinary. Who's to say that ordinary run-of-the-mill sex is not sacred? It just doesn't mean that that the sky is gonna part, that a dove is gonna come land on top of you at the... Well, anyways, I'm gonna...
lot to unpack there. But
it's called to be bad.
There you go. And to go further back, something you said about if we are trying to be good Christians and hold on to our virginity until marriage, and we do whatever else we do before, right? A lot of that comes with shame and guilt, right? And if we can't, quote unquote, control ourselves, then we're not being good Christians. We're not following God's will. And I remember my entire teenage life feeling that way. And it was horrible when we know healthy sexual expressions in teenagers is a good thing. It is a good thing, and makes for better adults, right? And these are all conversations that many of us are not having, again, because we've been brainwashed to believe that if we have these conversations or even have these feelings, there's something wrong with us, or there's something, and to keep it in this context, there's something unholy, unchristian, unspiritual, unreligious about us. Yeah.
So kind of going along this idea of if you participate in non-monogamy, you're a bad Christian or a sinner, or that's not God's plan or whatever. How would you respond personally if someone said that you were a bad pastor or a Christian because you partake in non-monogamy?
Well, people who know me personally will probably think, yeah, that's probably on brand for you. You're always doing something controversial.
That checks out. Yeah.
But honestly, I would argue opposite. I would say that it makes me a better pastor. I can guarantee you that, especially if you're a church pastor, there are people in your congregation who are either practicing non-monogamy, who are thinking about it, who are struggling with the thoughts of it, and their own shame and guilt around, I shouldn't be thinking these ways. So to be a spiritual leader who is not only supportive of it and knows about it, but then is actually practicing it, I think not just gives you a whole different level of relatability, but it also gives a level of support and endorsement for individuals who are evolving in their life, in their personal lives, in their sexual lives, in their romantic lives. And it helps, I think, removes the stigma and the shame, right? And because for better or for worse, people put their pastors on pedestals, right? And I always used to say, please don't put me on a pedestal. I am deathly scared of heights.
That's cute.
So I think there's a validation for it. And again, for me as a pastor, it required me to have those deep conversations and self-inquiries, around what do I really believe? Where do I really stand? Why do I believe what I believe? So again, regardless of if I landed on monogamy or non-monogamy, the fact that I had to deconstruct these things within myself I think makes me a better spiritual leader rather than just saying, nope, this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. We have this tendency to always want to make everything binary, and it is not. We are in just one big blob of gray, But there are many beautiful shades of gray.
Perhaps 50.
Perhaps. I see what you did there. I see what you did. That was nice.
Yeah. Well, to end our time today, Ogun, would it be okay if I bless you and all of our baddie viewers and listeners?
Go for it.
Yes. Ogun and all of you baddies out there, may you leave this episode today with renewed energy to explore what your relationships mean, the values that you hold, what romance is, what sexuality is, what pleasure is. May you go with curiosity and joy. Amen.
So it is.
May it be so.
All right.
Thank you for so much. Thank you.
Let's try that one again.
Yeah. I was just going to say thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it as well.
That's all for this episode of Called to Be Bad. Keep being your bad, beautiful selves, and I will see you next time.